Welcome back to part 2, where we finish building this house completely in Figma. I'm going to start off by drawing a circular shape for the background. We'll later use this as our mask. I'm trying to match this line right here to be the same as the roof. And I'm going to set this fill to the same color as our highlight. To start off our mountains, I'm going to be using the references at the left-hand side. Notice how the mountains go at a straight angle and they're not super contrasted in terms of going up and down, such as the Rocky Mountains in the United States. I'm going to try to mimic the same behavior in this illustration. So I'm going to be grabbing my pencil and I'm just going to be holding shift, and while holding shift, I'm going to be making sure that these lines are being drawn at a 45-degree angle. So that way they're all consistent. And it's just going to be slightly going down a little bit here. And it's going to be doing a slightly harsher drop as it gets closer to the beach. Now I'm just going to hold shift, connect it out, and connect it back. For the color, make sure that it's close to your highlight color. In this instance, I'm going to make it around this light, and the reason why is because the atmospheric depth, which means that the particles from the atmosphere are bouncing around, they're in the air, so they're blocking the complete 100% crisp image way out in the background. And the more far out a element is in the background, the more these particles are going to block your field of vision. And now I'm just going to set this to the back. Next, we'll make our tundra forest in the background. To do this, I'm going to be using my references, and notice how the trees are clumped together. I'm going to be making sure I keep this in mind while I'm making these. I'm just going to make these hills very similar to how I made the mountain. And the changes in these lines are going to be a lot less than those in the mountains. And the reason for that is that the tundra hills are much lower to the ground than the mountains. And now I'm just going to make this an even darker color, and actually I'm going to probably make it that light, and I'm just going to brighten up these mountains a little bit so they look even further into the distance, about like that. Just gonna push this up, scoot it back around there, scoot this mountain so it's about intersecting in the middle there. And I'm going to adjust this line a bit so it matches the same angle as this. And the only thing left is, I'm just gonna paste this right there. To draw our trees, I'm just going to use the polygon tool, and I'm just going to draw some pretty thin trees similar to our references. And notice how they're clumped together. So I'm going to be making sure that I do the same. And now once you finish building out your forest shapes, just select all of those triangles, Command G or Control G, Control or Command X, and V. And set this the same color as that. And there's the background for the forest. And now all that's left for the background is the water, which is actually super simple. I'm just going to draw a rectangle down here, make sure it aligns to my forest shape, set it as an accent color, and I'm going to take this shape in the background, Control C, Control Shift or Command Shift V, and I'm going to select my water shape, right click, use as mask. And now I'm just going to Control X with the whole mask selected and Control V. Now that we've finished working on our background, let's work on the foreground. To do this, first I'm going to draw the ground so our house doesn't look like it's hovering in midair. Make sure it's flat to the house, and just zoom in to make sure that it's not hovering still above the ground. And I'm just going to draw this out a little bit, and I'm just going to adjust the angle of this to match the rest. Like that. And I'm just gonna click on this, and I can actually, by clicking on this icon and holding it to the right, you can adjust the corner radius. So I'm gonna do it to about 120. And I'm just going to select my darker color since this ground is much closer to me and there's less particles in the way. And now, actually, I'm going to tone down this water a little bit because it's starting to compete with everything. So the way I'm gonna do that is just gonna select the accent color. I'm just gonna bring up the tint of it a little bit. So just makes it look like those particles are hitting it and you're not getting the full picture. And now let's do the same thing for the close-up shape. So the reason why this close-up shape is the shadow color is because this is the darkest color since it is closest to you. This is the most clear picture that you're going to get. And this is going to extend out beyond the mask. And the reason for that is because since it's the closest object to you, it makes it look like it's popping out of the scenery. Now that we've made our foreground shapes, let's just add some of the details to it. So I'm going to start out with selecting this, and I'm going to use my ellipse tool, and we're just going to draw some bush shapes here, just at random sizes. And just scatter them along similar to the trees. Just have them clump together and then have some space in between. And right now I'm trying to keep it as minimalistic as possible. So you don't want to overcrowd this with a bunch of bushes and plants and things, or else it might take over attention away from the house. You want the house to be the most detailed object here because it's the focus. Now I'm just going to select all these new circles, Command or Control G, and just set the fill color to be the same as that, and it looks like it's part of the ground. It's at that same depth of field level. And for this next part, I'm just going to draw the same triangle trees like I did in the background, except with these trees, we're also going to do some cuts. And what I mean by that is just I'm going to take the pen tool and I'm just going to draw some shapes here just to make it a little more detailed, similar to these references. Since it's closer up, you're going to see a little more detail. You're going to see leaves and stuff like that. So And then whenever you're happy with the amount of cuts that you have in your tree, just make sure that they're all selected. In this case, I had them all in the same vector group. Remove it, fill it, and I'm just going to set this to a shade in between this color and this color, since it's similar in between. In this case, my midtone's a bit brighter, so it looks to be quite in focus. But you'll want it to stand out from your background elements. And now I'm just going to select these shapes and subtract selection. And ta-da, we have a cut tree. Now the only thing left is to just make a smaller version. And just to save time, I'm just going to go up to the top, object, flip horizontal, just to make it look like it's different types of cuts. I'm going to put it behind. And I'm going to set this to be just a slightly darker version. Not too dark, not darker than this, or dark as this, but just a little slightly darker than this one. Actually, I'm just going to bring that one to the front. And just Control X or Command X, select your house, select the layer underneath your house, Command V, or Control V. And I'm just going to copy and paste the shape. And now I'm just going to do some tweaks to make it look more like our example. The next step is to add some small details such as the water reflections and the clouds. I'm going to start with the water reflections. So for these, it's kind of similar to what we did for the cuts in the trees, except these are going to be much wider and much thinner. Now with all of those selected, remove the stroke, add the fill. I'm going to make this white, Control X or Command X, hold Command, and just paste it in there. And now it'll be part of the mask layer. And now for these cloud shapes here, I'm just going to take my pen tool. I'm actually just going to draw some angles like these. And then just make sure the overall shape is just pretty thin. And just like that, and connect it back. And now what we can do is just grab these points on the top using the select tool, making sure that we're still in the edit path mode. I'm going to remove the stroke, add fill, and I'm just going to select the same as my background. And selecting those paths again, just you can max out these rounded corners. Now if you look, it looks like a lumpy cloud shape. So now that we have our lumpy cloud shape, we're just going to shrink this down just a little bit. And basically we can just copy and paste this over, and we can flip this around using the edit layer. But I'm just going to try to make it look like some of the background is spilling over, and also some of the white from the landing page background is going over into the illustration. So that just that way it ties the whole piece together a little bit better. It makes it look like one consistent piece. And then once you've finished all your cloud shapes, just select them all. And one detail I forgot to mention is the smoke coming from the chimney. So to add that, I'm just going to zoom in and just draw some like rectangular shapes using the pen tool. And just have it so kind of like gradually gets thicker as it proceeds to go away from the chimney. And I'm just going to draw it down. And so wherever it's crossing, I just like to do the style of chimney smoke where it's thinner in the horizontal axis, but it's wider in the vertical axis. All right, and I'm just going to adjust these a little bit. Making sure that the shapes get wider as the smoke continues to bellow out. Like that. And now that we've finished that, I'm just going to select all of these anchor points, except for these two because these are out in the distance. Select your fill, set this to white, and with all of these selected again, just max out the roundedness. And boom, it's a wavy smoke shape. And the very last step in this tutorial is adding the landing page elements. So I'm just going to, for the logo, add some text at 26. And I'm going to set this to cabin. It's a free Google font. Cabin bold. I'm going to call this app Lodge. So I'm going to go over to the letter spacing, and I'm just going to set this to about 20%. Now I'm just going to copy, paste this over here, right align it, and I'm going to just back down this letter spacing to around 10%. And I'm going to set this down to 18 point. Get started in all caps. I'm going to set both of these down to 16 point. And just some typical landing page links that you would see. Now I'm just going to draw a rectangle around the get started. Send this back there. And I'm just going to make this my orange tone. Actually, I'm just going to brighten it up a little bit. Set this to white and set these two to my shadow tone. I'm gonna adjust this down to 50 pixels. And just make sure that this is aligned with the logo. I'm just gonna draw a square. And I'm just gonna bring this down about like 20 pixels, just so it has some breathing room on the top. And I'm gonna copy and paste this down, set the letter spacing to probably about like 2%. And I'm going to set this to our header font, which is fairly big. This one's going to be 85. Just set it to the title of the video. And select both of these. Set it to a shadow tone. And I'm just going to adjust this line height, or the leading in between the words to be about 96. And copy and paste this down. I'm gonna set this font to 16. I'll set the subtitle to about 20 and set the leading to about 28. And for this, I'm going to set it to Open Sans, just because it's a very legible font. And I'm going to set this to regular. I'm going to adjust this down to about 38. And now I'm just going to copy and paste this button. Now this is actually looking a little too bright, so just to make it accessible, I'm going to just make it the darker tone. And now just adjust it down. Command G or Control G, select these both, adjust it down, and now it kind of has that nice fit in with the illustration. I'm going to select all of these. Command G for the illustration. I'm just going to set it around there, just so it's not too close. Make sure it's in the artboard. I'm going to adjust this tree back here. And there we go. Here you can see the original example that I made at the beginning of this tutorial and what we ended up making. As you can see, there's some slight differences, but most all in all, everything's pretty much the same. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe and hit the bell for more videos like these to come.